First and foremost, we want to know what are some of the trends that are happening in the South Sudanese oil industry?
Well, thank you very much on this program. What you just pointed out here is significant milestone for the oil and gas in South Sudan as a whole, a country which is on the oil industry for 98% of its economy, heavily reliant on what comes around in South Sudan to fuel economic performance. The resumption of oil production at South Toma is a major milestone in that they haven't had production from that oil field since 2013. So that's 5 years, and all of that is, of course, due to the civil conflict that has been simmering in the country for the last 5 years. So the resumption of the Toma oil field production is a sign not only that South Sudan's oil production is increasing, but also that the peace deal, the very fragile peace deal, which was hashed out in July of this year, is for now holding.
All right. If you're actually speaking to us right now, so can you confirm to all investors looking forward to maybe this particular conversation with South Sudan that the country is stable for investment in the oil sector?
Absolutely. The country is stable for investment. I think the security risks outside of Juba notwithstanding, this is a stable and secure place to put in your money. First and foremost, you're talking about a country with the 5th largest oil reserves on the continent. You're talking about a country which has a large legacy in the oil and gas industry, well-established oil and gas reserve, well-established oil and gas infrastructure, and ongoing production increases that are appetizing for the average oil and gas investor.
Talk to me. What do you see as the most pressing issues in South Sudan as of right now, the most pressing issues?
I think security and peace have to be it. I think that the government has a singular challenge on its hands, and that's to convince the investment community of the world that South Sudan is a place where people can put in their money and it can stay for a long period of time without the risk of further conflict. So I think this is something that we've been trying to communicate to the international community about our conference, which is taking place next month in Juba, November 21st, 22nd. It's that South Sudan is yet again a place where investors can come in.
Tell me, Guillaume, at this particular conference or the forum that you're talking about, the Oil and Power South Sudanese Forum, what are some of the key discussions that you look forward to bring onto the table?
Well, I think it's that first and foremost, there's oil in the ground. There is an ongoing production base which is capable at top capacity to produce upwards of 350, 400,000 barrels per day. That's approximately 3 times what is currently coming out of the ground. So the existing production base warrants a lot of service companies to enter the market, to bring new technologies, enhance and improve oil recovery techniques, which the market sorely needs. I think the second is that there are exploration assets to be acquired from companies. There are already conversations going on between the government and Russian companies such as Rosneft, such as Zarubezhneft. There have been ongoing discussions for the last few years taking place between the government and Total and Tullow Oil. So there are conversations taking place, and our loud and clear message to the international community is be part of that conversation because the government wants to move forward.
Guillaume, you're talking about, of course, oil exploration and pumping. Just about August, we saw the country opening about the Toma oil field in the south, of course, looking at a good 80,000 barrels per day, and they have a target to hit about 210 actually, 1,000 barrels per day. How far with this conversation?
Beg your pardon?
No. I mean, back in the day, in August, we saw them, South Sudanese government opening up the Toma South field, South oil field, and with plans to hit about 210,000 barrels per day at the end of the year. Tell me, how far have we gone into these matters?
Well, we've gone a significant matter across. I think there were two specific milestones with Toma South that investors need to keep track of. First and foremost, resuming oil production is a sign that the peace deal is holding up until a point where it's safe to go back out to that oil field and resume oil production. Significant milestone that hasn't been achieved in 5 years. The second, of course, is the movement of new oil drilling equipment that we started seeing. You've got the governments of South Sudan and Sudan working together. And in September, we had a very important milestone, and that was the movement of a drilling rig into the country for the first time since 2013. So by all indications so far, the oil production rise at Toma is proceeding as planned. And that sends a clear signal to investors that the industry is back in motion.
Guillaume, finally, of course, before I let you go, we know South Sudan is one of the largest when it comes to oil reserves in Africa. You just mentioned fifth. Yeah, but we know that South Sudan, of course, is not going to make it by itself, but we need to see more on infrastructure development and the neighboring countries coming in to actually make this possible. So are we seeing any of that at the moment?
Absolutely. I think there are some specific conversations which are taking place, which give us some very, very encouraging news about how things are going to play out in the country over the next 12 months. Conversations, first and foremost, that are going on between the Russian government and the government of South Sudan. We saw a memorandum of understanding for a cooperation between Rosneft and Zarubezhneft. Those are two very large state-owned companies in Russia. We had a state visit from the Minister of Petroleum to Moscow just last month. And conversations taking place between the Minister Ezekiel Gatkuoth and Minister Alexander Novak of Russia. That will translate into more cooperation taking place between Russia and South Sudan over the coming months. A lot more participation between governments of Turkey and companies in Turkey in the market. And then, of course, a very large delegation of companies coming from South Africa to Juba next month for the conference, which tells us that we're getting some new companies taking a look at the country that weren't looking at it before.